6 months passed in what felt like both forever and no time at all. Bruno's success at David's gala had created something nobody expected, a demand for an entirely new kind of security service. Danny's phone hadn't stopped ringing. Tech executives, celebrities, politicians, even foreign diplomats wanted to know about the friendly dog that catches bad guys. Some calls were legitimate. Others were just curiosity. But enough were serious that Danny had to make a decision. Was this a one-time success story? Or could they actually build something sustainable? The answer came from an unexpected place. During a routine follow-up with David, who'd become something of a friend after the incident, the tech billionaire made a suggestion. "You know what you should do?" David said. "You should create a whole program. Train more dogs like Bruno. Not every dog that washes out of police or military programs is actually a failure. Some of them just need different jobs." It made sense. Bruno had failed at being a police dog for the exact qualities that made him brilliant at this work. How many other dogs were sitting in shelters or rescue organizations labeled as not aggressive enough or too friendly or easily distracted, when really they were perfect for something else? Danny brought the idea to Victoria and Keanu. They were sitting in the training facility conference room, Bruno asleep under the table after a morning training session. "It would require serious investment," Victoria said, but her eyes were bright with interest. "We'd need trainers, space, equipment, and we'd need to be selective. Not every friendly dog can do what Bruno does. He's special." "I'm in," Keanu said immediately. "I'll invest whatever it takes. This is important work and I want to be part of it." Danny smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. Because I think you should be more than just an investor. You should be the face of this program. Your involvement is what makes people take it seriously." That's how the K9 Social Intelligence Unit was born. They kept the name simple, professional. The mission was clear: rescue and train dogs who failed traditional programs and give them careers in specialized security work. They started small. Victoria identified 3 dogs from various programs around the country. A Belgian Malinois named Luna, who was too gentle for military work. A Labrador named Chester, who'd washed out of explosive detection for being overly social. A mixed breed named Pepper, who'd been released from a Border Patrol training program for being insufficiently intimidating. Rodriguez got the call asking if he'd consider coming on full-time as the head trainer. He'd been following Bruno's success from Portland, sending weekly messages checking in. The offer meant leaving the police force, leaving the city he'd lived in his whole life. But it also meant working with Bruno, again, and building something that could help both dogs and people. "I'm in," he told Danny without hesitation. The training program they developed was unlike anything in traditional K9 work. Instead of focusing on aggression and intimidation, they emphasized social intelligence, subtle communication, and specialized detection work. Each dog learned to identify different types of surveillance equipment, unusual chemical signatures, and even behavioral cues in humans that might indicate deception or stress. But more importantly, they learned to do all this while appearing to be nothing more than friendly. Well-behaved pets Luna, the Belgian Malinois, turned out to have an incredible talent for reading body language. She could identify when someone was nervous or anxious, just by observing their movements. Chester, the Labrador, had a nose that could detect electronic devices from 30 feet away. Pepper, the mixed breed, showed an unexpected talent for identifying specific people in crowds, making her perfect for protective detail work. Bruno remained the star, though. He'd become so good at his job that Keanu could bring him to events and Bruno would work completely independently, only alerting when he found something worth reporting. They'd successfully completed 7 more cases in 6 months. Everything from finding corporate spies to identifying security breaches at high-level meetings. The bond between Keanu and Bruno had deepened into something special. They'd developed their own language, their own rhythm. Keanu could read Bruno's smallest gestures, and Bruno seemed to intuitively understand what Keanu needed before he asked. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Rodriguez found Keanu and Bruno in one of the training rooms. Keanu was lying on the floor and Bruno was sprawled across him, both of them seemingly napping. "You two are supposed to be working," Rodriguez said, amused. Keanu opened one eye. "We are working. This is advanced bonding technique. Very sophisticated." Bruno's tail thumped without the dog opening his eyes. "Sure it is," Rodriguez laughed. Actually, I came to tell you something. We got a call from the Department of Defense. They want to know if our training methods could work for diplomatic security details. Apparently someone high up saw the article about our program. That article had been published 2 weeks earlier in a major security industry magazine. Danny had been hesitant about publicity, but they'd decided that being open about their work might help other organizations think differently about failed K-9 candidates. The response had been overwhelming. Rescue organizations were calling to ask if they could send dogs for evaluation. Police departments were asking about retraining programs. Even some military units were inquiring about alternative uses for dogs that didn't meet traditional combat standards. "We're going to need a bigger facility," Keanu said, sitting up. Bruno grumbled in protest at being disturbed. "And more trainers. This is growing faster than we expected." "It's because it works," Rodriguez said. Bruno proved that friendly doesn't mean ineffective. Sometimes friendly is exactly what you need. That afternoon, they held a staff meeting to discuss expansion. Danny had found a larger property about 20 miles outside Los Angeles, a former ranch with plenty of space for training facilities, kennels, and housing for staff. Victoria had identified 6 more potential trainers, all with security or K-9 backgrounds. David had offered additional funding, wanting to be part of something he believed in. "We need to be careful about growth," Victoria warned. "Quality over quantity. Every dog needs individual assessment. Every trainer needs to understand that this isn't traditional K-9 work." "Agreed," Danny said. "We're not trying to build a factory. We're creating opportunities for specific dogs to find their purpose." Keanu spoke up. "I think we should also create an outreach program. Go to shelters, rescue organizations, even police departments. Look for dogs that didn't fit the standard mold. Give them a chance to show what they can do." Everyone agreed. Within a month, they'd moved to the new facility. Rodriguez had his own office, which felt surreal after years of working out of a police station locker room. Victoria had a state-of-the-art training complex. Danny had proper offices for the business side of the operation, and Bruno had his own room, complete with the world's most comfortable dog bed, a collection of toys, and a window overlooking the training grounds where he could watch the new dogs learning. The official launch of the expanded program was scheduled for a Saturday in October. They'd invited press, potential clients, and representatives from various law enforcement and security organizations. It was a risk, putting themselves out there so publicly, but Danny felt strongly that transparency was important. The night before the launch, Keanu couldn't sleep. He found himself walking the grounds at 2 a.m, and of course, Bruno appeared at his side within minutes. "Couldn't sleep either?" Keanu asked. Bruno leaned against his leg, looking up with those intelligent brown eyes. They walked to the training facility and Keanu flipped on the lights in the main hall. This was where it had all started months ago with one dog who'd been told he wasn't good enough. "You know what you did?" Keanu said to Bruno, sitting down on the floor. The dog immediately climbed into his lap despite being way too big for that. "You didn't just find a new career. You created a whole new way of thinking about what dogs can do, about what anyone can do when they're given the right opportunity." Bruno licked Keanu's face, tail wagging. "Yeah, I know." Keanu laughed, pushing the dog's big head away gently. "You're just happy to have a job where everyone pets you and calls you a good boy. But still, you started something important here." The launch event the next day went better than anyone hoped. Over 100 people attended. They got to see demonstrations of the dogs working in various scenarios. Luna identified an anxious person in a crowd. Chester found hidden electronic devices. Pepper successfully located a specific person among dozens of volunteers. But it was Bruno's demonstration that brought down the house. They'd set up a mock dinner party with 20 volunteers. Hidden among them, 3 people with covert recording equipment and 1 person carrying falsified credentials. Bruno had never met any of these people before. Keanu walked Bruno through the party on a casual lead. To anyone watching, it looked like a man and his dog mingling at a social event. Bruno greeted people, accepted pets, wagged his tail. Within 10 minutes, he'd identified all 3 people with recording equipment and sat down directly in front of the person with fake credentials, refusing to move. The crowd erupted in applause. Bruno, ever the performer, took a bow, actually bowed, front legs stretched forward, rear end in the air, tail wagging. "That's not part of the training," Rodriguez whispered to Victoria. "No," she agreed, smiling. "That's all Bruno." During the Q&A session, a reporter asked Keanu the question he'd been hoping someone would ask. Mr. Reeves, what makes Bruno special? Why does this work? Keanu looked at Bruno, who was sitting calmly beside him, surveying the crowd like he owned the place. Bruno was told he was too friendly for police work, too playful, too trusting. He failed at being intimidating because that's not who he is. Keanu paused, choosing his words carefully. But those aren't flaws. They're exactly what makes him extraordinary at what he does now. People see a friendly dog and they relax. They let their guard down. They don't realize they're being investigated by one of the smartest, most capable detection dogs I've ever seen. He reached down to scratch behind Bruno's ears. Sometimes being fired from the wrong job is the universe pushing you toward the right one. Bruno was always this talented. He just needed someone to see his potential differently. Bruno barked once, as if agreeing, and the room filled with laughter. After the event, as guests were leaving and staff were cleaning up, Rodriguez found Keanu and Bruno sitting outside, watching the sunset. "This was a good day," Rodriguez said, sitting down beside them. "Yeah," Keanu agreed. "Beginning of something bigger, I think." Bruno was lying between them, completely content, occasionally letting out happy sighs. "You know what's funny?" Rodriguez said. "When I first brought Bruno to training, I was so worried he'd never find his place. I thought maybe he was just broken somehow, not cut out for any kind of work." "He wasn't broken," Keanu said quietly. "The system was. It only had one definition of what a working dog should be. Bruno showed us there are other definitions, better ones maybe." Rodriguez pulled out his phone and took a photo of Bruno sprawled in the grass, looking completely at peace. "I'm going to send this to Captain Phillips, the woman who kicked Bruno out of the program. She should see how wrong she was." "Don't," Keanu said. "She wasn't wrong about what she needed. Bruno wasn't right for that job. And that's okay. Not every path is meant for everyone. She helped us find Bruno. In a weird way, she's part of this success story too." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the hills. Bruno snored softly between them. Somewhere in the facility, the other dogs were settling in for the night. Luna, Chester, Pepper, and 3 newer arrivals who were just starting their training. Each of them had been told they weren't good enough for traditional work. Each of them had found their way here because someone saw past the failure to the potential underneath. Bruno stirred, opening one eye to check that his people were still there. Satisfied, he went back to sleep, tail giving one lazy wag. "Good boy, Bruno," Keanu whispered. "Very good boy." And really, that was all Bruno had ever wanted to hear. That he was good at something. That he mattered. That his way of being in the world wasn't wrong, just different. 6 months ago, he'd been a failure. Today, he was a pioneer. The dog who proved that sometimes the qualities that make you wrong for one thing make you perfect for something else. Sometimes being too friendly is exactly friendly enough. Bruno's tail wagged once more in his sleep, chasing dreams of belly rubs, new friends, and a job well done. The charity gala was scheduled for Saturday night at a beachfront mansion in Malibu. The kind of place that showed up in architecture magazines and made normal people wonder what it would be like to have that much money. The host was Keanu's friend, a tech billionaire named David Chen who'd made his fortune in artificial intelligence and machine learning. No relation to Danny, though they joked about it constantly. David's situation was serious. 3 threatening messages in 6 weeks, each one containing information only a handful of people knew. Details about private business deals, personal health matters, even the name of a charity David was planning to support anonymously. Someone close to him was leaking his life piece by piece. The threats themselves were vague but disturbing. "We know everything. More to come unless you listen." What made it worse was that David couldn't figure out who to suspect. His inner circle was small. His chief financial officer, Rick, his executive assistant, Hannah, his business partner, Tom, and a few others who'd been with him for years. These were people he trusted completely. The idea that one of them could betray him was almost harder to accept than the threats themselves. Victoria had spent 3 days before the gala doing preparation work. She'd reviewed David's schedule, interviewed his staff, and examined his home for existing surveillance equipment. She'd found 2 devices that shouldn't have been there, one in David's home office, another in his car. Both were sophisticated, expensive, professional-grade equipment. This wasn't some amateur job. The gala itself was a fundraiser for ocean conservation, David's personal passion. 200 guests, most of them from the tech and entertainment industries. Dinner, dancing, a live auction. The perfect setting for someone to gather more information or make another move. The plan was simple. Keanu would attend as himself, with Bruno as his companion. Nobody would question a celebrity bringing a well-behaved dog to a charity event. While guests focused on Keanu, Bruno would do what he'd been trained to do. Saturday afternoon, Victoria went over everything one more time. She, Danny, and 2 other security specialists would be scattered throughout the event, dressed as regular guests. They'd all have communication devices, small earpieces that looked like hearing aids. Keanu would have one too, disguised as a fashionable ear cuff. Bruno's the primary asset, Victoria reminded everyone. We're backup. Let him work. Don't interfere unless something goes wrong. Keanu picked up Bruno's leash. The dog had been bathed and groomed that morning, looking particularly handsome. Bruno seemed to sense something important was happening. He was alert, focused, but still maintaining that friendly demeanor that made him special. You ready for this? Keanu asked quietly. Bruno's tail wagged once. Game time. They arrived at the mansion just after sunset. The property was stunning. Glass walls overlooking the ocean, modern architecture blending into the landscape, servers moving through crowds with champagne and appetizers. A string quartet played near the infinity pool. The moment Keanu stepped out of his car with Bruno, heads turned. Not just because Keanu was recognizable, but because he'd brought a dog. People immediately wanted to meet Bruno, ask questions, take photos. It was perfect cover. David greeted them near the entrance, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. He looked tired, stressed. Thanks for coming, he said to Keanu, then crouched down to Bruno's level. And you must be the famous Bruno. Danny's told me a lot about you. Bruno did his job, giving David a friendly greeting while thoroughly checking him over. Nothing suspicious. David was clean. Let's get you 2 settled, David said, standing. Bars inside, food everywhere. Make yourselves at home. As they moved into the party, Bruno began working. To everyone watching, he was just a friendly dog who loved people. He'd approach guests tail wagging and they'd stop to pet him. What they didn't realize was that Bruno was conducting sophisticated searches with every interaction. Keanu moved smoothly through the crowd, letting Bruno do his thing. He'd stop to talk with people he knew, laugh at jokes, sip sparkling water, all while monitoring Bruno's subtle signals through his peripheral vision. 40 minutes into the event, Bruno alerted for the first time. A lean against Keanu's leg while they were talking to a famous director. Keanu casually glanced at where Bruno had been sniffing. A man in his 30s, expensive suit, talking animatedly on his phone near the bar. Keanu touched his ear cuff subtly. Got something. Guy in the gray suit, currently on phone. Victoria's voice came through. Copy that. That's Tom Reed, David's business partner. He's supposed to be in New York tonight. Interesting. Tom had told David he couldn't make the gala because of a meeting in New York. Yet here he was in Malibu. And Bruno had detected something electronic on him beyond a normal phone. Keanu moved closer, bringing Bruno with him. The dog seemed to understand this target was important. When Tom finished his call, Bruno seized the opportunity, trotting over with his tail wagging like they were old friends. Hey there, Tom said, immediately charmed. He bent down to pet Bruno. What a beautiful dog. Is he yours? He asked, looking up at Keanu. Yeah, this is Bruno, Keanu said easily. He's friendly. Sometimes too friendly. Tom laughed, giving Bruno thorough attention. While he did, Bruno worked. His nose tracked along Tom's jacket, his pants pockets. Then Bruno did something he'd only do if he found something very specific. He nosed at Tom's jacket pocket, then sat and made direct eye contact with Keanu. Recording device. But Keanu couldn't just accuse Tom of carrying surveillance equipment in the middle of a party. They needed more information, more evidence. He really likes you, Keanu said conversationally. Bruno's a good judge of character. Tom smiled, but something flickered across his face. Uncertainty? Guilt? I like dogs. Had a German shepherd growing up. He stood, brushing dog hair off his suit. I should find David, say hello. Nice meeting you both. As Tom walked away, Victoria's voice. Don't lose sight of him. Dinner was announced shortly after. 200 people moved toward long tables set up on the lawn overlooking the ocean. The seating was assigned, and Keanu found himself near David's table, which included Tom, Rick the CFO, Hannah the assistant, and several board members. Bruno lay quietly under Keanu's chair during the first course, playing his part perfectly. But Keanu could feel the dog's alertness. Bruno was watching, waiting. During the main course, Bruno shifted. His nose was working, tracking something. Keanu felt the subtle signal. Bruno's nose tapped his hand under the table. Once, recording device. But Tom was across the table, nowhere near them. Who else had something? Bruno moved slightly, his attention focused on a woman seated near David. Stephanie. That was her name. Rick's girlfriend of about 8 months. She worked in fashion, wasn't part of David's business at all. She seemed nervous, barely touching her food, checking her phone constantly. Bruno stood slowly, stretching as if he'd been lying down too long. Then he wandered over to Stephanie's chair, friendly and casual. She smiled, reaching down to pet him. As she did, her purse shifted on the back of her chair. Bruno's nose went directly to the purse. Then he did something Keanu had never seen in training. He sat down right next to the purse and refused to move, staring at Keanu intensely. 3 taps with his nose. Something unusual. Something wrong. Sorry, Keanu said to the table, standing up. Bruno's being weird. Let me get him some water. Victoria's voice in his ear. What's happening? Bruno's fixated on Stephanie's purse. 3-tap signal. He found something bad. There was a pause. Then Danny's voice and Stephanie Morris, Rick's girlfriend. She's been with him for 8 months. Background check came back clean, but it was basic. What kind of bag is it? Keanu glanced back. Designer. Brown leather. She's got it hooked on her chair. Can you get Bruno away without causing a scene? Working on it. Keanu returned to the table with water for Bruno, but the dog wouldn't budge from Stephanie's chair. This was becoming noticeable. Stephanie looked uncomfortable. Rick was starting to look annoyed. I'm so sorry, Keanu said, trying to lead Bruno away. The dog, normally obedient, resisted. This was part of his training, too. If the threat level was high enough, he'd persist even if commanded to stop. Maybe he smells food in my bag, Stephanie said, her voice a little too high, a little too nervous. I had some crackers earlier. That must be it, Keanu agreed. But he caught David's eye across the table and gave the slightest nod. They'd discussed this signal beforehand. If Bruno indicated something serious, Keanu would let David know. David stood smoothly. Actually, Keanu, could I borrow you for a minute? There's someone I want you to meet. Stephanie, would you mind putting your bag somewhere else? Maybe in the house? It wasn't really a question. David was using his position as host to create an opportunity. Stephanie's face went pale. Oh, sure. I can just move it under my chair. The house would be better, David said firmly. Rick, why don't you help her? The energy at the table shifted. Rick looked confused. Stephanie looked panicked. Victoria and her team were already moving into position, casual but ready. Stephanie grabbed her purse, clutching it to her chest. Actually, I'm not feeling well. I think I should go. I don't think so, Victoria said, appearing at Stephanie's elbow. She wasn't subtle anymore. Her hand was on Stephanie's arm, firm. I'm with event security. I need you to come with me, please. What happened next happened fast. Stephanie tried to run. Rick grabbed her arm, confused and angry. The purse fell, contents spilling across the lawn. Among the lipstick, phone, and wallet, 3 small electronic devices, a notebook with David's schedule written in it, and a small camera designed to look like a button. Bruno sat calmly next to the spilled contents, tail wagging slightly. He'd done his job. The party erupted in confused chatter. David called for everyone's attention, apologizing for the disturbance, asking everyone to please continue enjoying the evening. Victoria and Danny escorted Stephanie and Rick inside. Within minutes, local police were called. Keanu led Bruno away from the chaos, finding a quiet spot by the pool. He sat down on the edge and Bruno immediately put his head in Keanu's lap. You did good, buddy, Keanu said softly. Really good. David found them there 20 minutes later. His face was a mix of emotions, relief, betrayal, exhaustion. Rick had no idea, David said, sitting down next to them. Stephanie was using him to get access to my life. She'd been planting devices, following me, recording private conversations. The threats were from people she was selling information to. Rick's devastated. I'm sorry, Keanu said. Don't be. You and Bruno just saved me from something that could have destroyed everything. David reached out to pet Bruno's head. The dog leaned into the touch. This amazing dog caught what a team of experienced security professionals missed. How? Because nobody suspects the friendly dog, Keanu said. That's his superpower. Bruno's tail thumped against the ground, happy to be included in the conversation even if he didn't understand the words. Later that night, back at the training facility, the whole team gathered to debrief. Bruno was sprawled on the floor, exhausted and content, a new favorite toy in his mouth. "We've got 5 other clients asking about Bruno's services," Danny announced. "Word travels fast in these circles," Victoria nodded. This could be the start of something new. A whole different approach to personal security. Keanu looked at Bruno, who had fallen asleep mid-chew, the toy still in his mouth. "What do you think? Ready for more adventures?" Bruno snored in response, paws twitching in dreams that were probably about chasing cats and making friends. Yeah, Keanu thought. This dog was definitely ready. Bruno's first real training session started at 6 in the morning. Not because Victoria was cruel, but because she wanted to see how the dog handled early mornings. Some dogs were groggy and unfocused before noon. Bruno bounded into the training room like it was Christmas morning, tail creating its own breeze. "Good sign," Victoria muttered, making a note on her tablet. Keanu arrived shortly after, carrying 2 coffee cups and looking significantly less awake than the dog. He'd committed to being there for most of Bruno's training, wanting to build a real bond with the animal. Plus, as he'd told Danny, this was the most interesting research he'd ever done for a role. "All right, Bruno," Victoria said, pulling out a small electronic device that looked like a modified phone. "Let's see what you already know." The first week was assessment. Victoria needed to understand exactly what Bruno could and couldn't do. His scent detection skills from police training were solid. He could find hidden objects quickly and accurately. His obedience was good when he wasn't distracted. His intelligence was remarkable. The problem started when Victoria introduced something new: electronic signatures. Traditional drug or explosive detection relies on specific chemical scents. But electronic devices give off their own unique signatures, combinations of heated metal, plastic compounds, battery chemicals. Victoria needed Bruno to learn dozens of these different signatures and distinguish between them. At first, Bruno was confused. He'd find Victoria's phone when she asked him to search, but also his own water bowl, a tennis ball, and once, inexplicably, Keanu's left shoe. "He's not getting it," Keanu said, worried, after the 3rd day of mixed results. "He's getting it," Victoria corrected. "He's just getting everything. His nose is too good. He's picking up every single scent in the room. We need to teach him to filter." That's when Victoria changed her approach. Instead of asking Bruno to find things, she started rewarding him only when he found specific things. It was a subtle difference, but important. Bruno wasn't just a search dog anymore. He was becoming a specialist. By the end of week 2, something clicked. Bruno started to understand that different situations required different finds. When Victoria set up a mock living room and asked him to search, he'd methodically check the space and alert only to the hidden recording device, ignoring everything else. "That's my boy," Keanu said, giving Bruno enthusiastic pets. The dog wagged so hard he nearly knocked over a lamp, but technical skills were only half the training. The harder part was teaching Bruno to work in social situations. This was completely different from police work, where dogs were expected to be focused and serious. Bruno needed to appear casual, friendly, completely non-threatening, all while doing sophisticated detection work. Victoria set up their first social scenario in week 3. She brought in 6 people, other trainers and security staff, and had them mingle in a room set up like a cocktail party. One of them carried a hidden recording device. Bruno's job was to figure out who. The first attempt was a disaster. Bruno was so excited to meet 6 new people at once that he forgot he had a job to do. He went from person to person, tail wagging, accepting pets, trying to play. After 20 minutes, Victoria called it off. "He's not taking it seriously," one of the trainers said. "No," Keanu disagreed. He'd been watching carefully. "He's taking it too seriously. He's working so hard to be friendly that he's forgetting to search. We need to make it feel less like work." That's when Keanu had an idea. What if they made the searching part of the friendly behavior? Dogs naturally sniff people when they greet them. What if Bruno just did that but more thoroughly? They spent the next week retraining Bruno's greeting behavior. Instead of a quick sniff and move on, Bruno learned to take his time with each person. A sniff of the hands, then the pockets, then the bag if they had one, all while appearing to just be a very friendly, very thorough dog saying hello. It worked. By week 4, Bruno could work a room of 10 people and identify who had electronic devices on them, all while looking like he was just being social. More importantly, the people he was investigating found him charming. They'd laugh, pet him, tell Keanu how cute his dog was. Nobody suspected a thing. "This is actually brilliant," Danny said, watching Bruno work through a scenario. "He's better than any human investigator because nobody sees him as a threat." The training got more complex. Victoria introduced different environments: formal dinners, gallery openings, business meetings, outdoor events. Each setting had its own challenges. At a mock dinner party, Bruno had to search under a table full of people without disrupting the meal. At a gallery opening, he had to navigate crowds while tracking specific scents. At a business meeting, he had to remain calm and quiet until given a subtle signal to begin searching. Bruno struggled with the business meeting scenario. Sitting still for extended periods wasn't his strength. He'd fidget, sigh loudly, and occasionally let out what sounded like bored groans. The trainers found it hilarious. Victoria did not. "He needs to be invisible in these situations," she said firmly. "Right now he's anything but." Keanu spent extra time working on this with Bruno. They'd sit together in quiet rooms, Keanu reading or working on his laptop, Bruno lying nearby. At first, Bruno lasted maybe 10 minutes before getting restless. But gradually, with patience and consistency, he learned. Calm energy from Keanu seemed to transfer to the dog. By week 6, Bruno could lie quietly for over an hour, then spring into action the moment Keanu gave him the signal. The most impressive part of Bruno's training was his signal system. Police dogs typically alert in obvious ways: sitting, barking, pawing. Bruno had to be subtler. Victoria taught him 3 different alerts depending on the situation. For casual settings, Bruno would simply lean against Keanu's leg and stay there. Most people thought the dog was just being affectionate, but Keanu would know. Bruno found something. For formal settings where obvious contact wasn't possible, Bruno would sit and look directly at the target, then glance at Keanu. It looked like a dog making eye contact with his owner. In reality, it was Bruno saying, "That person right there." For complex situations with multiple targets or threats, Bruno learned to touch his nose to Keanu's hand in a specific pattern. 1 tap for a recording device, 2 taps for surveillance equipment, 3 taps for something unusual he couldn't identify but knew was wrong. "He's ready," Victoria announced at the end of week 7. "I've been doing this for 25 years. This is the fastest I've ever seen a dog learn such complex work." They held a final evaluation. Victoria brought in people Bruno had never met, including a professional penetration tester who specialized in planting covert surveillance equipment. The scenario was a dinner party at Danny's actual house with real food, real guests, everything authentic except everyone knew it was a test except Bruno. To him, this was just another fun evening with his favorite person. Keanu arrived with Bruno on a leash, dressed casually but appropriately for a dinner party. Bruno trotted beside him, tail wagging, looking around with interest. To the casual observer, he was just a well-behaved pet. Over the next 90 minutes, Bruno worked the room perfectly. He greeted each guest in his friendly, thorough way. He found the recording device planted in someone's jacket pocket. He identified the surveillance equipment hidden in a decorative plant. He even detected a small tracking device stuck under a chair that Victoria hadn't known about. The penetration tester's personal touch to really test Bruno's abilities. Most impressively, not a single guest realized they were being investigated. They all thought Bruno was just an exceptionally friendly dog who loved attention. Several people asked Keanu where he'd gotten such a well-trained animal. When Victoria called the end of the evaluation, everyone gathered in the living room. The penetration tester was shaking his head in disbelief. "That dog found equipment I've successfully hidden from security teams, law enforcement, even military personnel," he said. "And he did it while making everyone in the room like him more. That's not just training, that's talent." Victoria pulled Keanu aside while others congratulated Bruno with treats and pets. "He's better than I expected," she said quietly. "Whatever happens with your friend's situation, this dog has a real future in this kind of work. He could help a lot of people." Keanu looked over at Bruno, who was currently lying on his back getting belly rubs from 3 different people at once, living his best life. "He just needed the right job," Keanu said. "Sometimes being told you're not good enough is really just being told you're in the wrong place." That night, Rodriguez got his weekly video call. But this time it was different. Victoria, Danny, and Keanu were all on the call together. He passed, Victoria said simply. With the highest marks I've ever given. Officer Rodriguez, you had a brilliant dog who just needed someone to see his potential differently. Rodriguez felt emotions he didn't expect. Pride, relief, a little bit of sadness that he hadn't been the one to figure this out. So what happens now? Now we put him to work, Danny said. The real job, if you're still comfortable with this. Rodriguez looked at the video feed showing Bruno sleeping in his fancy dog bed, snoring softly. The dog looked healthy, happy, content. Yeah, Rodriguez said. I think Bruno's exactly where he needs to be. After the call ended, Keanu sat down on the floor next to Bruno's bed. The dog opened one eye, saw it was his favorite person, and went back to sleep. Tomorrow's the real deal, buddy, Keanu whispered. You ready to catch a bad guy? Bruno's tail thumped twice against the bed, even in sleep. Ready or not, Bruno was about to show everyone that being too friendly for police work made him perfect for something else entirely. The next evening, Rodriguez set up his laptop on the kitchen table. Bruno was sprawled on the floor nearby, chewing on a rubber toy and making those weird grunting sounds happy dogs make. Rodriguez had no idea what to expect from this call. Private security consultant could mean anything from bodyguard work to some sketchy operation he wanted no part of. At exactly 7 o'clock, his laptop chimed. Rodriguez answered the video call. A professional-looking Asian man in his 40s appeared on screen. He wore a crisp button-down shirt and sat in what looked like a modern office with glass walls. Officer Rodriguez, thank you for taking the time. I'm Danny Chin. He had a calm, measured way of speaking that immediately put Rodriguez at ease. Before we go any further, I want to be completely transparent about this opportunity. What I'm about to discuss might sound unusual, but I assure you everything is legitimate and legal. Okay, Rodriguez said slowly. I'm listening. My firm handles specialized security for high-profile clients. Celebrities, tech executives, politicians. We're not talking about standard bodyguard work. We deal with situations that require more creative approaches. Danny leaned forward slightly. 3 weeks ago, a client of ours came to us with an interesting problem. He's been receiving threats. Nothing violent, but someone's been leaking private information about him. We believe it's someone in his inner circle. Rodriguez frowned. And you need a dog for this? Not just any dog. Traditional security measures aren't working. Guards, cameras, surveillance. Whoever's doing this is too smart. They know how to avoid detection. So we started thinking differently. What if we had an asset that could move through social situations without raising suspicion? Something that would actually make people more comfortable, not less. A friendly dog, Rodriguez said, starting to understand. Exactly. But not just friendly. We need a dog with real detection training. Someone who can identify specific scents, electronic devices, chemical compounds. Your Bruno washed out of the police program for being too playful and social. In our world, that's not a flaw. That's the whole point. Rodriguez glanced at Bruno, who had abandoned his toy and was now trying to befriend his own reflection in the oven door. I don't know, Rodriguez said carefully. This sounds pretty specialized. Bruno's smart, but I'm not sure he's that smart. Actually, before we go further, there's someone else who wants to speak with you. Someone who's very interested in working with Bruno, if you agree to this. Danny's face moved partially off-screen. He's ready. The camera shifted and Rodriguez nearly fell out of his chair. Keanu Reeves appeared on the screen. Not someone who looked like Keanu Reeves. Not a relative or impersonator. The actual real Keanu Reeves. Dark hair, genuine smile, sitting in what looked like a comfortable home office. Hey, Keanu said, giving a small wave. Sorry for the surprise. Danny thought we should wait to tell you I was involved because, well, people sometimes think it's a prank. Rodriguez's mouth opened and closed a few times. This is real? Keanu laughed. It's real. Listen, I know this is weird. Here's the situation. I've been researching a role for a film about private security. As part of that research, I've been consulting with Danny's firm. Then this case came up with my friend, and Danny mentioned this idea about using a dog in a completely different way. I thought it was brilliant. I also have some free time right now, and I wanted to be involved in seeing if this could actually work. Your friend is the one receiving threats? Rodriguez asked, still processing that he was talking to a movie star. Yeah, he's a tech guy, very private person. He doesn't want his name out there, and we need to respect that. But someone close to him is feeding information to people who want to damage his reputation and his business. We've tried everything normal. Nothing's worked. Danny reappeared in the frame beside Keanu. The idea is this. Keanu would attend events with Bruno as his companion dog. No one questions a celebrity bringing a pet to certain gatherings. It's actually expected in some circles. While everyone's distracted by Keanu, Bruno does the real work. But I saw Bruno's file, Keanu added. The report said he's incredibly intelligent. Great nose. Learns fast. The only problem was he wanted to make friends with everyone instead of being intimidating. For what we need, that's perfect. Rodriguez's mind was spinning. What kind of training are we talking about? Intensive, Danny said. 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, depending on how fast Bruno adapts. We'd bring him to a private facility in Los Angeles. You'd be welcome to visit any time, and we'd send you daily updates. Bruno would learn to detect specific electronic signatures, certain chemicals used in covert recording equipment, even stress responses in people, all while appearing to just be a friendly dog at a party. And if it doesn't work? Rodriguez asked. If Bruno can't learn this stuff or if it turns out he's not right for it? Keanu spoke up. Then we help you find him an amazing home anyway. No pressure. But I've got a good feeling about this. I've worked with animal trainers on a lot of films. When I read Bruno's file, I saw a dog with incredible potential who just ended up in the wrong job. Rodriguez looked down at Bruno again. The dog had given up on the oven and was now lying upside down, all 4 paws in the air, tongue hanging out sideways. He looked ridiculous and absolutely happy. Can I think about it? Rodriguez asked. This is a lot to process. Of course, Danny said. Take a few days. I'll send you some information about our facility, our training methods, everything. You can call me with any questions. We're not trying to rush you. After they ended the call, Rodriguez sat in silence for a long time. Bruno, sensing something was up, came over and put his big head in Rodriguez's lap. What do you think, buddy? Rodriguez asked, scratching behind the dog's ears. Want to go to Hollywood? Bruno's tail wagged. But then again, Bruno's tail was always wagging. Over the next 3 days, Rodriguez did his research. He called other private security consultants he knew from his years on the force. He looked up Danny Chen's firm. Everything checked out. They were legitimate, well-respected, worked with major clients. Several people told him that if Danny was involved, it was a good operation. The Keanu Reeves part still felt surreal. But Rodriguez watched some interviews and saw how Keanu talked about animals, the respect he showed for the people he worked with. The guy seemed genuine. On the 4th day, Rodriguez made his decision. He called Danny. We'll do it, he said. But I have conditions. I want weekly video calls with Bruno. I want detailed reports on his training. And if at any point I think this isn't right for him, I pull him out. No arguments. Done. Danny agreed immediately. When can you bring him down? A week later, Rodriguez loaded Bruno into his truck for the drive to Los Angeles. The dog had no idea this wasn't just another trip to the park. He stuck his head out the window the entire way, ears flapping, happy as could be. The facility was in the Hollywood Hills, hidden behind tall gates and thick trees. From the outside, it looked like just another luxury home. Inside, it was a training complex that would make any K-9 unit jealous. Indoor and outdoor training areas, obstacle courses, rooms set up like different social environments. Keanu was there when they arrived, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He crouched down to Bruno's level immediately. Bruno, of course, was thrilled to meet someone new. He practically wiggled himself in half with excitement. Hey, Bruno, Keanu said softly, letting the dog sniff his hands. You ready to learn some new tricks? Rodriguez watched them interact. There was something calm about the way Keanu moved, the way he spoke. Bruno seemed to sense it too. After his initial excitement, the dog settled down, leaning against Keanu's leg. Danny appeared from inside. Ready for the tour? They showed Rodriguez everything. The sleeping quarters where Bruno would stay, comfortable and clean. The training areas. The equipment. Then Danny introduced the head trainer. Victoria was former Secret Service, Danny explained. She'd spent years protecting presidents and diplomats before going private. She was in her early 50s, fit and sharp-eyed, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. I've read Bruno's entire file, Victoria said, kneeling down to examine the dog. Bruno immediately tried to lick her face. She allowed it briefly, then stood. He's perfect for this. The police wanted him to be something he's not. We're going to train him to be exactly what he is. What does that mean? Rodriguez asked. Police dogs are trained to be intimidating, aggressive when needed, single-minded. Bruno wants to connect with people. He wants everyone to like him. In our work, that's gold. People see a friendly dog and they relax. They let their guard down. They don't realize they're being investigated. Over the next few hours, they explained the full training program. Bruno would learn to identify dozens of specific scents associated with surveillance equipment. He'd practice moving through crowded social situations. He'd learn to signal his handlers in subtle ways that wouldn't alert anyone watching. The hardest part for Rodriguez was saying goodbye. He'd only had Bruno for a few months, but the goofy dog had worked his way into Rodriguez's heart. As he prepared to leave, Bruno seemed to realize something was happening. The dog sat by Rodriguez's feet, leaning heavily against his leg. "Hey," Keanu said quietly, walking over. "I'll take good care of him. I promise. This is going to be good for him." Rodriguez nodded, not trusting his voice. He gave Bruno one last scratch behind the ears, then headed for his truck. As he drove away, he looked in the rearview mirror. Keanu was crouched next to Bruno, and the dog was already starting to relax. Maybe this crazy idea would actually work. Maybe Bruno had finally found where he belonged. That night, Rodriguez got his first update. A video of Bruno exploring his new space, tail wagging, checking out all the interesting smells. At the end of the video, Keanu appeared, giving a thumbs up. "Day 1 complete," Keanu's voice said off camera. "Bruno ate dinner, made friends with everyone here, and is currently sleeping on the world's most expensive dog bed like he owns the place. I think he's going to be just fine." Rodriguez smiled, watching the video again. Bruno was snoring in the footage, all 4 legs stretched out, completely content. Yeah, Rodriguez thought. Maybe this was exactly where Bruno needed to be. Bruno had one job, just one, and somehow he managed to mess it up in the most adorable way possible. The 2-year-old German Shepherd sat in the kennel at the Portland Police Department, his tail thumping against the concrete floor. He didn't understand why Officer Rodriguez looked so sad. Bruno thought he'd done great today. He'd found the toy, made everyone smile, and even got some belly rubs from the kids. What could be better than that? But Rodriguez knew the truth. In the world of police K-9 units, Bruno was what they called a washout. Not because he wasn't smart, not because he couldn't do the work, but because he loved people just a little too much. It all started 6 months earlier when Bruno arrived at the training facility. From day 1, the trainers noticed something different about him. While the other dogs focused intensely on their handlers, Bruno wanted to say hello to everyone. And we're not talking about a quick sniff and move on. Bruno wanted to be best friends with every single person he met. The head trainer, a stern woman named Captain Phillips, tried to work with him. She'd been training police dogs for 15 years and had seen all types. But Bruno was special. He had an incredible nose. During scent detection exercises, he could find hidden objects faster than dogs twice his age. His intelligence was off the charts. He learned commands after hearing them just once or twice. The problem was everything else. During his first real training exercise, Bruno was supposed to help corner a practice suspect in a warehouse scenario. The suspect was actually a trainer in a protective suit, and Bruno was supposed to bark and hold position. Simple enough, right? Well, Bruno had other plans. The moment he spotted the trainer, he noticed something far more interesting. A small orange cat had wandered into the warehouse and was sitting on a cardboard box.